Hi and welcome to #carconference. Feel free to tweet me at Kilkenny Chris. I might be the one in the car, but hopefully you guys are going to give me the drive. Let's see where this goes. My name's Chris Kilkenny, I'm 21, I'm from Edinburgh and I'm a people support worker. In my spare time, I use my life experience in the form of a constructed narrative. I've been going around to conferences and events, and I've been speaking to teachers and head teachers and pretty much anyone that will listen, trying to change perceptions on what it's like to go through education while suffering from severe poverty. What we're doing just now is we've got a camera, a lapel mic and a dodgy light which is sort of stuck to the seat, and we're going to try and make a video blog which we're going to #carconference. We're going to do it once a week. We're going to take questions from people on Twitter regarding education and poverty. During the week I'll speak to people, get their views, and on the Friday we'll stick up this video and we'll speak about it, and hopefully we'll get some people involved in the conversation. Well, I suppose my views on child poverty in the UK, I've got a unique position of that I've been living in poverty and probably still do live in poverty. So it's all I've ever experienced. Although I have been exposed, I've had exposure to other communities and more affluent areas of life. So I've seen how unequal not just this city but the country that we live in is. We live in one of the most wealthiest countries in the world, yet there's 2.3 million children living in poverty as we speak. So I suppose my first real the first time that I really realised that I was living in poverty was back in 2006, and the BBC was making a documentary. I was living in a rehabilitation centre for my mum while she was detoxing from heroin, and they were making a documentary on my family, and it was showing what it was like for a family to be living in such extreme poverty. At this time, I interviewed Jim Murphy, the MP or ex-MP, who used to be the Minister for Work and Welfare. And at this time, he told me, I was a young kid, I was in his house, he gave me a gift voucher for my local football club. He was a really nice guy, and this was my first sort of exposure to politics, and to see that I was really living in poverty, because I seen this man's house, I seen the way that he lived, and I seen what it was like to sort of be middle class, so to speak. I seen the massive inequalities, and this was a man that was he was fighting on behalf of people that were in poverty. He said to me that by 2020, Labour hoped that child poverty would be ended, and that was his personal goal as a politician. And I suppose what really ignited me to get involved was a few years later, he was Shadow Defence Minister, and he was talking about spending £205 billion to renew Trident. Now, roughly, that this to me was outrageous. I mean, I was looking at this thinking, like, we could end child poverty, scrap Trident, 205 billion. I mean, I'm not very good at maths, but that's roughly around £89,000 for every child that's living in poverty in the UK. I mean, what difference could that make? So to me, I thought, what can I do as a young person? What can I say? Not very much, but I've got a story, and I've got a narrative, and I can start to tell it. I can start to tell people. I fortunately came across some very well-seasoned speakers, the real David Cameron, and sort of mentored me into doing stuff at conferences and events and telling my story and trying to raise awareness of what it's like to live in poverty in the UK, especially in education. My views on poverty is that it shouldn't exist. We live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world. There should be no children not having their dinner. There should be no children not having their breakfast. Every child should feel safe at home and at school and in education, and every child should have the same opportunities. I'm a campaigner for equality, so that's my views on child poverty. Well, my education, I love to learn. I love to be at school. I 3 school placements I had, eventually I left with no exams, and I loved school. So that posed the question to me now and for the last few years of why was that? What was it that went wrong for me that meant that I couldn't thrive in education? Because I knew I had the potential, and many others knew I had the potential to thrive in education. And I wondered why, and how many other people are being failed because they're just not suited to the system. Education is built for people to be fit into it. I think that education should fit around people. So basically, to use an analogy, what I would say is I'm like a black box that's in an aeroplane that's crashed. I'm full of information from the crash. And I think that because of my experience in education, I should take the information out of the black box and I should use it to prevent further crashes of flights and to prevent further mishaps and to try and edit the new builds and the new flight plans for planes. Or, for the analogy, education. I think that the experience that I've went through and my ability to be able to talk about it truthfully and objectively gives me a certain position where I'm not just a person who's worked in education or as a head teacher or as a policy maker. I am a young person who is very recently in education, who is able to talk about the true feelings and how I felt when I was in education and what I needed to get through it. And so I think that me telling my experience and my story to teachers and to head teachers gives them that real insight which sometimes they might lack, because they might lack that certain communication with young people, and especially for people to be able to talk on such a frank and truthful level to these policy makers and to these teachers and to these head teachers, I think can make a big difference. I know there's other young people out there with stories just like mine. It's not unique. I'm just trying to do the best I can to make a difference and to make some sort of change. I still live in the community that I was brought up in. I still stay 50 yards from my childhood home. I now work in schools. I work in education after some educational backtracking. As I told you, I left with no exams. So on a daily basis, I'm trying to help young people that I'm working with. And after school, my extracurricular activities is trying to inform and raise awareness. And that's what we're doing here today. So some tips that I could give to teachers and head teachers that are working with young people that might be coming from disadvantaged backgrounds in their schools. One is to look out for the signs of young people and not to be judgmental, because some young people, they might be suffering from extreme poverty and anything could be happening in their lives. You just don't know. You see, when you come to school, it's quite easily to monotonously look at young people. There's 1,000 young people in your secondary school, and to just see the uniforms. But when you get into the class, so if you've got disruptive students, you might just straight away assume that they're out to ruin your lesson. But don't always assume that's the case, because I was a disruptive student and I know now why I was a disruptive student. I was disruptive because I couldn't concentrate. I had so much going on in my life and there wasn't anybody in the school who just wanted to ask me if I was okay. So if I could stress one thing to teachers, it's to look out for the signs. Don't let anyone fade into the back of the classroom either, but don't let anyone hide in plain sight. Be there to support your young people, no matter how annoying they may seem or how quiet they may seem. Just be there to support them, be consistent, asking them simple, opening questions. You don't have to pry into their life. Just letting that young person know that if they need you, you are there to support them. Another sort of tip I can give as well, and this is sort of aimed at service leaders and head teachers, is to look at the way you spend your budget and ask yourself, are your opportunities and are your classes really free? Because I can remember when I was at school, and I say this when I go out speaking at events and conferences, I can remember when I was at school making the choice not to take home economics in third year, because you had to pay £2 a week for ingredients, and I never had £2 a week. My mum never had £2 a week. Even asking my mum for £2 a week could cause an extreme amount of distress. So I knew not to take that lesson. But I liked hospitality. I liked to cook. I liked making things. I really enjoyed that subject, but I knew not to take it because it cost £2 a week. I never got to go to football or rugby or any of the school extracurricular activities that cost money, because I never had money. So ask yourself, are your opportunities really free? And if they're not, I'd implore you to do something about it. There's lots of alternative ways to raise money for these kids to be doing these extracurricular activities, and I would advise you to be as creative as possible. There's always that one person in your school, in your staff, that has got an idea, that is the fish that's swimming the opposite way, to raise money to help these young people, and obviously to try and do it as silently as possible, because in reality kids can be cruel. Another and probably the last tip that I could give you is to try and give young people in your school as much exposure to different life experiences as possible. Exposure is key, because in my community, young people aren't exposed to anything better than what they see around them. What they see around them is what they can expect to grow into. And that's what I was like as a young person. And I got my exposure later on in life due to persistence, me probably being really annoying, and asking and pestering and wanting to go places and having that thrive. But not all young people have got the same shout, but they have got the same potential. And that's key. Realising that every young person, no matter the background, has potential. You just need to give them the exposure, to give them the drive to find out what they want to do. Thanks for watching, thanks for taking part. Subscribe to the YouTube page. I'm new to this. Follow me on Twitter at Kilkenny Chris. Hashtag it at carconference. Get involved, get everyone else involved. Let's get this seen by as many people as possible, and let's change as many perceptions as we can.